"You're just the bank account, sweetheart," my mother-in-law said, loud enough for the entire reception hall to hear. "The real family sits at the front." She laughed, patting my husband's arm like I wasn't standing 3 feet away in heels that were already killing me. I smiled. It was the same smile I'd been wearing for 6 years, patient, polished, and completely hollow. Then I said very quietly, so only she could hear, "Enjoy the open bar. It's the last thing I'll ever pay for." She thought I was joking. I wasn't. That night started a 4-month process I'd been quietly building in my head for longer than I'd like to admit. They thought I was the grateful one, the steady one, the woman behind the curtain who wired money and asked nothing in return. What they forgot, what they always forget about quiet people, is that we notice everything. And I had been noticing for a very long time. Let me back up, because the reception hall wasn't where this started. It was just where I finally stopped lying to myself. I'm 31 years old. I'm a senior financial analyst at a mid-sized investment firm in Charlotte. I've been with the company since I was 24, and I worked my way up the hard way. Late nights, skipped vacations, a mortgage I could actually afford because I ran the numbers 3 times before signing anything. Numbers are what I do. They are also, as it turned out, exactly what my husband's family saw when they looked at me. His name is Conrad. We met in grad school, and in the beginning he was everything. Funny, warm, the kind of person who remembered your coffee order and your grandmother's birthday. I fell completely. We got married at 27, a small ceremony in the Smoky Mountains that I paid for almost entirely because Conrad's parents had, quote, some temporary cash flow issues. I didn't mind then. I genuinely didn't. I told myself it was an investment in us. The temporary cash flow issues, I came to learn, were not temporary. They were a lifestyle. Conrad's mother, I'll call her what I eventually started calling her in my head, which was simply the problem, had grown up with money her own parents lost before she was 30. She'd spent the rest of her life performing a version of wealth she no longer had. Their house in Greensboro was beautiful from the outside. Inside, I knew the roof leaked in 2 places. The HVAC was a decade past replacement, and the kitchen renovation she showed every visitor had been financed 3 times over. Conrad's father had retired early from a job that didn't pay enough to retire early from, and no one in that house had acknowledged the math. Conrad's younger brother, I'll call him exactly what he was, which was the project, had a business. Technically, it was a custom furniture workshop he'd started at 25 with money he'd borrowed from their parents, who had borrowed it from us, though it took me 2 years to trace that particular river back to its source. The workshop had good Instagram photos and almost no revenue. Every quarter there was a new explanation. The wood supplier fell through, a client backed out, the e-commerce platform needed an overhaul. Every quarter there was a call from Conrad's mother about how close they were to a breakthrough. I had, at that point, quietly contributed to this ecosystem in ways I'd stopped fully tracking. A wire here described as a loan. A credit card bill paid because things were tight. The catering deposit for my brother-in-law's engagement party, which I covered because his fiancé's parents were coming, and the family didn't want to look struggling. $12,000 over 18 months to shore up the workshop's operating costs, structured as a private investment because Conrad said his brother was serious this time, and it would be different. It was never different. That's what I do. I kept every receipt, every wire confirmation, every text where Conrad relayed a request from his mother framed as temporary. I kept them in a folder I'd created almost without thinking about it, the way an analyst keeps documentation. Not because I planned to use it, but because discarding financial records felt physically wrong to me. That folder would matter later. At the time, it was just habit. The wedding was his brother's. The fiancée, a perfectly nice woman who I think genuinely had no idea what she was marrying into, had planned something beautiful. A venue outside Asheville, 200 guests, the kind of event that costs what it costs. I was asked, about 8 months out, if I could help with the venue deposit because the timing was difficult. The deposit was $6,000. I wired it without making a scene because I loved Conrad and I wanted his family to be okay. 3 months before the wedding, I was told I'd be seated at table 9. not the head table, not near the family. Table 9, in the back third of the room, with Conrad's father's former co-workers and a cousin who lived out of state and no one had seen in years. Conrad's mother explained it very naturally, the way people explain things they've already decided. The head table needed to be immediate family and the wedding party, and there simply wasn't room. Conrad was in the wedding party. His seat was at the front. I was, apparently, adjacent to the occasion. I want to be precise about how I felt in that moment because it matters for what came next. It wasn't rage. It wasn't even hurt, exactly. It was clarity. The kind you get when a data set finally resolves into a pattern you'd been suspecting for months. I saw the whole structure at once. The loans that were never loans, the front table I'd bought a ticket to and wasn't allowed to sit at, the version of me that existed in their minds, which was a resource attached to their son, useful but not quite family. I said nothing at the time. I went to the wedding. I wore a dress I'd bought for the occasion, sat at table 9, ate the meal I'd partially financed, and smiled at Conrad's father's former coworkers. And when his mother made her comment at the reception, the bank account comment, loud and laughing, like a joke everyone was in on, I heard it land in a room full of people who also laughed, including my husband, who looked away a half-second too late. That was the moment. Not because of what she said, but because of what Conrad did with that half-second. I drove home that night while Conrad rode with his family. I sat in my car in our driveway for a while before going inside. I thought about the folder on my laptop. I thought about what a controlled, deliberate person does when they've finally reached the end of something. I didn't cry. I made a list. The first person I called was my own mother the next morning. She listened without interrupting, which is rare for her, and when I finished, she said, "What do you need from me?" I said I needed her not to tell anyone yet. She said, "Okay." That was enough. The second call was to a woman named Pauline, who was my firm's in-house counsel and also one of the sharpest people I'd ever met. I didn't tell her everything. I framed it as a personal financial situation I needed to understand better. She pointed me toward a colleague of hers, a family and civil attorney named Mr. O.C., who I called that week. Mr. O.C. was exactly what I needed. Thorough, calm, and completely unsentimental. I sent him the folder, all of it. Every wire, every text, every email where a loan was mentioned versus how it was later characterized. He called me back 2 days later. "Some of this is recoverable," he said. "The documented loans are the strongest. The informal transfers are harder but not impossible, especially with the text chains establishing intent." He paused. "The more interesting piece is the workshop investment. Your brother-in-law incorporated it as an LLC and you're listed in the original paperwork as a minority investor." I hadn't known that. Conrad had handled the paperwork and told me it was just a formality. "Which means," Mr. O.C. continued, "that you have standing to request a formal accounting of how those funds were used." I asked him to start there. What came back from the forensic review of the workshop's financials took about 3 weeks, and it was worse than I expected in a specific way I hadn't anticipated. The $12,000 I'd invested had not gone to equipment or materials or the e-commerce overhaul. According to the purchase records, it had largely gone to 2 things. A 4-day trip to a resort in Hilton Head that had been posted on Instagram as a business retreat, and a piece of equipment that had been purchased under the workshop's name and then returned for cash 3 weeks later. The cash was unaccounted for. Mr. O.C. used the word misappropriation. He said there might be grounds for fraud. He asked how I wanted to proceed. Here is what I told him. "I don't want drama. I want my money back and I want out. Build me the cleanest, quietest exit you can find, and then I'll decide what to do with the leverage." He appreciated that framing. He said most people in my position wanted fire. I told him I preferred mathematics. The first signal I sent was simple. Conrad and I had a joint account that his family occasionally used as a relay. He'd move money to it from our savings and then transfer to his parents when they needed something. I closed that account. I opened 2 individual accounts in my name only and moved our shared expenses into a third account I controlled. I said nothing to Conrad about it other than that I was reorganizing our finances for the new tax year. He didn't question it. He rarely looked at the accounts closely, which I had known for some time. 2 weeks later, the workshop's next operating draw, a quarterly amount Conrad had been transferring without formally asking me, just doing it, bounced. Conrad texted his brother that there was a bank issue. His brother called Conrad. Conrad came to me. "Something's wrong with the transfer," he said. He was standing in the kitchen doorway looking confused in the way he always looked when money came up. Slightly pained, slightly apologetic, like he'd rather be anywhere else. "There's no transfer," I said. "I was making coffee." I didn't turn around. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I'm not sending any more money to the workshop, or to your parents, or anywhere that isn't our household." The silence was very long. "Nadia," he said. And I want to say here that this was the first time in months he'd said my name in a way that sounded like he meant it. "What's going on?" I looked at him the same way. I look at a budget projection that doesn't reconcile. Steady, focused, not angry, just precise. "Sit down," I said. "We need to talk about a few things." I showed him the folder. Not everything, not Mr. Ocy's report yet, just the documented transfers. The amounts, the dates, the texts from his mother requesting things and his text to me relaying them as their original ideas. I let him read. He got quieter with each page. "I didn't realize how much it added up to," he said finally. "I know," I said. "That's part of the problem." He wanted to know what I was going to do. I told him I wasn't sure yet. I told him that was going to depend a lot on what happened next. He asked if I was leaving him. I told him I wasn't making any decisions tonight, but that everything depended on whether we could be honest with each other about what this family dynamic had actually cost us and whether he was willing to change it. He said he was. He looked scared. I think the scared part was real. I gave him 3 days to sit with it before his mother called. She called on a Tuesday morning when Conrad was at work. She'd heard, from Conrad I assumed, that the transfers had stopped. Her voice had that particular quality it got when she was managing a situation. Warm on the surface, with an edge of command underneath, like a customer service representative who was also your boss. "Sweetheart," she said, "I heard there was some confusion about the transfer. I'm sure it was just a mix-up. You know how these things are." "There was no mix-up," I said. "I closed the account." A brief pause. "I don't understand. The transfers to the workshop and to your household, they're stopping. Permanently." Her voice shifted. The warmth dropped out of it like a trapdoor. "Nadia, we are family. What you're doing right now, pulling back like this without a conversation, that's not how family operates." "We've had plenty of conversations," I said. "They were just mostly one-sided. Your husband would be devastated to hear you speak this way." "My husband has heard me speak this way," I said. "He and I have talked. This conversation is separate." She was quiet for a moment. Then, "You've always had a problem with us. I've seen it from the beginning. You think you're better than this family." "I think I've been generous with this family," I said, keeping my voice level, "and I think that generosity was mistaken for obligation. I've corrected the misunderstanding. This is about the seating at the wedding." Her voice went hard. "That is what this is about. You're punishing my son's wedding over where you sat at a table." And there it was, the reduction. 6 years of financial one-sidedness, every quiet wire and covered bill, all of it collapsed into me being petty about table placement. I had expected this. I was ready for it. "I'm going to send you something," I said. "Please read it carefully." I emailed her Mr. Ocy's summary of the workshop financials. Not the full report, just the summary. The one that listed the Hilton Head Resort, the returned equipment, the unaccounted cash. I gave her 24 hours to read it before anything else happened. She called back in 40 minutes. The warmth was entirely gone now. She said I was threatening her family. She said I was trying to destroy her son. She said I had no proof of anything and that I was a cold, calculating woman who had never truly loved Conrad, and that she had always known it. She was crying, but it was the sharp, brittle kind of crying that isn't quite grief. It's the sound a person makes when the story they've been telling about themselves starts to crack at the seams. "Tell me," I said when she paused to breathe, "does your son know where the money from the equipment return went?" Silence. "Because I'd like to know too," I said. And if I can't find out another way, I'm happy to let an attorney ask the question formally. She hung up. I sat at my kitchen table and finished my coffee. The next call came from my brother-in-law, which I had expected. He was angrier than his mother, less controlled. He called me a snake, said I had manipulated my way into the family specifically to undermine it, that I had always been jealous of what he was building. I let him talk. When he stopped, I asked him the same question I'd asked his mother. Where did the equipment return money go? He said that was none of my business. I'm a minority investor in the LLC, I said pleasantly. It is, technically, entirely my business. Mr. Ossi's office will be reaching out about the formal accounting. He said he would bury me. He said Conrad would see who I really was. He said, and this was the one that told me everything I needed to know. Dad helped me with that anyway, it wasn't my idea. I wrote that down. Date, time, exact words. I added it to the folder. Conrad came home that evening to a house that felt different. I think he could feel it. The way a room changes when a decision has been made. I told him about both calls. I told him what his brother had said about his father. I watched his face go through several things at once. Denial, calculation, and then, finally, something that looked like grief. My dad was involved? He said. That's what your brother said. He sat down on the couch and put his hands on his knees and looked at the floor for a long time. I didn't push. I've learned that the truth works better when you give it room to settle. I didn't know, he said. I know you didn't, I said, and I meant it. That part I believed. What do you want to do? He asked. I want to know if you're going to stand next to me, I said, or if you're going to stand with them, because I can't stay married to someone who hasn't decided. He didn't answer that night. But he didn't leave either. The family convened, because that's what they do, they convene, at his parents' house the following Saturday. His mother organized it. She called it a family meeting, which was her language for a situation where she planned to apply enough collective pressure that the problem person capitulates. The problem person was me. Conrad told me about it and then looked at me sideways, waiting to see what I'd do. Tell them I'll be there, I said. He looked surprised. Are you sure? Bring a pen, I said, and tell your father I'm bringing documentation. I arrived 20 minutes early. His parents' living room was arranged the way it always was when something formal was happening. Chairs pulled into a rough circle, his mother on the settee she'd had reupholstered twice in the time I'd known her. His father sat in the armchair he thought of as his. My brother-in-law and his fiancée were on the love seat. His father's sister, the aunt who had laughed at the reception, was there too, perched on a dining chair someone had dragged in, her arms folded across her chest like a judge who'd already decided. I sat in the chair across from his mother and put my bag on my lap. His father opened the proceedings. He was a big man who had once been imposing and now was mostly just loud. He said this had gone far enough. He said I was tearing the family apart over money, which he called a poor foundation for any relationship. He said what I was doing to the workshop, threatening legal action, getting attorneys involved, was an embarrassment to everyone, and that I needed to understand that family didn't operate like a business transaction. I let him finish. I'd like to show you something, I said. I opened my bag and removed a printed copy of Mr. Ossi's full report. I placed it on the coffee table. No one moved to pick it up immediately. They looked at it the way people look at something they know is about to change the conversation. That is a forensic accounting of 6 years of financial transfers between myself and this family, I said. It includes wire records, bank statements, purchase histories, and text documentation. The total, as of last month, is just under $94,000. The aunt's arms dropped off her chest. The most recent section, I continued, covers the workshop specifically, including the Hilton Head trip, including the equipment that was purchased and returned for cash, and including, I looked at my father-in-law, the loan application filed using my name and our home address as collateral, without my knowledge or signature. Conrad made a sound I'd never heard him make before. That last item, I said, keeping my voice completely even, is the one Mr. Ossi believes constitutes fraud, financial fraud, specifically. It's a federal matter depending on the amounts and the institutions involved. His father's face went through a sequence I watched carefully. Bluster, then calculation, then something that was almost shame but hadn't quite decided to be. That was a mistake, he said. A clerical error. We intended, Dad, Conrad said. His voice was very quiet and very final. Don't. His father stopped. The room was silent in the specific way. Rooms get silent when something has been decided that no one has said out loud yet. His mother had her hand over her mouth. His brother had gone the color of old concrete. The fiancé was looking at the floor. The aunt, the one who had laughed at the bank account comment, had the expression of a person who was recalculating whether she wanted to be associated with this particular group of people. I looked at my husband. He was looking at me. I'm not pressing charges, I said. I want to be clear about that. That is not what I'm here for. I looked at his father. What I am here for is this. The loans, the documented ones, will be repaid on a schedule that Mr. Ocy's office will send over this week. The workshop investment will be returned in full, plus interest, which is standard for a mismanaged investment. And going forward, there will be no more requests. Not to Conrad, not to me, not framed as emergencies or family obligations or investments. We are done. You can't just... His mother started. I can, I said. I've already spoken to our mortgage lender and our bank. Our joint accounts have been restructured. Conrad and I have a household account that covers our home and our expenses. It does not extend to anyone else. If that changes, it will be because Conrad and I decide together that it changes, not because someone calls on a Tuesday and says things are tight. His mother looked at Conrad. It was a particular look, the one that said, "Fix this, you are my son. Fix this." I had seen that look redirect him 100 times. I watched him receive it, and then I watched him not move. Mom, he said carefully, she's right. The silence that followed was a different kind. It had weight to it and texture. His mother looked like she'd been handed something she didn't know how to hold. We drove home separately. I had taken my own car, which was something I'd decided on purpose. Conrad was already in the kitchen when I got back, standing at the counter with his arms folded, and a look on his face I'd never quite seen before. Stripped down, younger somehow, like the performance of it had finally gotten too heavy. I didn't know about the loan application, he said. I know. I should have paid more attention. He paused. I should have paid more attention to a lot of things. I put my bag down on the chair by the door. Yes, I said, you should have. We were quiet for a moment. I want to stay married, he said, if you'll let me. I thought about the folder. I thought about table 9. I thought about the half-second where he'd looked away. I thought about tonight, and the word mom, and the fact that he hadn't moved. Then we go to counseling, I said. Starting this week, and you call your father tomorrow and confirm what I said tonight. Not because I'm asking you to, because it's true. He nodded. He looked tired in a way that was different from before, not the tired of someone who's avoiding something, but the tired of someone who's just put something down. The weeks that followed were strange and quiet in a way I hadn't expected. The absence of their presence, the calls, the requests, the low-level hum of someone else's financial anxiety running underneath everything, left a silence that took some getting used to. I hadn't realized how much noise it had been making until it stopped. His parents moved into a smaller place, a rental in a part of Greensboro that was perfectly fine, but not what his mother had been presenting to the world. His father got a part-time consulting arrangement through a former colleague, something I knew because Conrad told me, not because I was tracking it. The repayment schedule Mr. Ocy sent over was agreed to without a counter. Not graciously. His father signed it with the energy of a man who had lost an argument he was still convinced he should have won. But it was signed. The workshop closed 6 months later. My brother-in-law took a job at a flooring company, which he complained about to Conrad and which Conrad relayed to me neutrally, neither defending it nor mocking it. I said nothing. A job was a job. The fiancé, who had never done anything wrong that I could identify, called me once, about 2 months after the family meeting. She said she was sorry. She said she hadn't known how deep it went and that she was figuring out whether she wanted to be part of it. I told her that was a reasonable thing to figure out, and that I hoped she made the decision that was right for her. She thanked me. I don't know what she decided. That wasn't mine to track. Conrad and I went to counseling. We went every week for 4 months, and then every other week, and then we just together when we were ready to stop. It was not comfortable. There were sessions where I sat in a chair across from my husband and said things I had never said out loud, and he said things I hadn't known he was carrying, and the counselor, a calm, precise woman who reminded me a little of myself, held the space without letting either of us collapse into it. Conrad talked about growing up in a house where money was shame and his mother's approval was the currency that mattered most. I talked about the folder, about why I'd kept it, and what that said about what I'd believed was coming, even before I let myself believe it consciously. The thing about being an analyst is that you see the patterns before you name them. I had known for years. I had just been choosing not to call it what it was. His mother contacted me once. A letter, an actual paper letter, which I hadn't expected. It was short. She said she had started seeing a therapist at her daughter-in-law's insistence. She said she understood now that what the family had asked of me, the way they had framed it, the way they had positioned my money as something that belonged to the collective rather than to me, was wrong. She didn't use the word sorry, but she wrote, "I see now what we made you into for us, and I am ashamed of it." I read the letter twice. I put it in a drawer, not the folder, a different drawer, one without documentation in it. Just a letter. I didn't respond, but I didn't throw it away. I don't know yet what I'll do with that. What I know is this. I go to work now and the number I carry in my head is mine. Not a projection of someone else's need. Not a calculation of how much I can redirect before it affects our life together. Just mine. I renovated our guest bathroom in October. Something I'd wanted to do for 2 years. And I made every decision without asking whether the budget would be needed elsewhere first. I booked a trip to Portugal for next spring, just Conrad and me, and I made the reservation and didn't think once about who else that money could have gone to. My own mother calls on Sundays. She asks how things are going. I tell her the truth, which is that things are going well and also that they are sometimes hard, and she says that sounds about right. I funded a small scholarship this year through the firm's community giving program, $5,000 for a first-generation college student pursuing a finance or economics degree. I didn't announce it. It wasn't about being seen doing something good. It was about putting money somewhere it would grow into something real, which is what money is supposed to do. I've thought a lot about what my mother-in-law said at that reception. The bank account comment. I used to feel the sharpness of it every time it came back to me. The way it landed in front of all those people, the laughter that followed. Now when I think about it, I mostly feel something quieter. A kind of recognition. She wasn't wrong that I'd been functioning as a bank account. She was just wrong about what that meant. A bank account closes. The money moves somewhere else. And the people who were counting on unlimited access have to learn to live differently. That's not a sad ending. It's just what happens when a system is finally running correctly.